Billions of years ago, a massive planet called Maldek was part of our solar system. Maldek had an enormous moon that could support life. It was warm, it had oceans and an atmosphere. And on that moon, a civilization of giants. They created intelligent machines to mine Maldek for resources. But the machines evolved, turned on their masters, and claimed Maldek for themselves. A devastating war lasted generations. Finally, the giants built a weapon powerful enough to destroy all the machines. The weapon worked. The weapon worked too well. The explosion destroyed Maldek. With their planet shattered into a million pieces, the giants' moon was threatened. So the atmosphere vanished, and the oceans froze. The surface turned dark. Civilization collapsed. We don't know what the giants called their moon, but we have a name for it. We call it Mars. The weird smell in the house. It's kind of like wishing perfume and wet dog. Why'd she kick you out? It's from the pig. Checks out. Oh, please. I brought his ass that book club. Enough needs a snack, gossip, and a wine tasting with a book-shaping skew. What did you do? All I said was, if I wanted to read about a sad girl touching a sad vampire, I'd reenact my third divorce. Except this time I let the vampire take the house. Plus, I may have live streamed it for a taste of it. And the lady who walked inside, it's funny how we each glass of France here. Look, forget the book club. If you're looking for something, did you just bookmark today's sponsor, perhaps? You betcha. Raid Shadow Legends, a hit RPG hero collector played by millions around the world. Right now is the best time to start. It's got PvP battles, wild fantasy champions, and a massive campaign packed with lore, boss fights, and strategy. This month, new players who download the game using my link and use promo code TREEHUGGER can get the legendary Green Warden Ruark completely free. Part of the game's newest faction, Green Warden, is a defense champion from the Sylvan Watchers, built to take hits, protect your team, and draw enemy fire with a powerful taunt. He grants shields when your team bolster set gives him extra durability. Also give Karato the Fox Hunter, a legendary spirit companion, 300,000 silver, XP brews, an energy refill, and a one-day XP booster, all for free. Hit level 15 and you'll unlock Hero, one of the best epic champions in the game, with 200,000 silver, an energy refill, and a one-day XP booster, and an epic skill tome. Perfect for powering up your squad. Click the link in the description and use promo code TREEHUGGER or scan the QR code on the screen to download Raid and claim all these rewards. Then join Hecklefish's clan and help him take down the clan boss. A clan! Now I can start my own book club. First pick, 50 Shades of Beige. Suburban book clubs exposed. I'll write it myself. What's it gonna be about? Botox, box wine, and crony crap. It's kind of petty. What do you call petty? I call strategy. I will have my revenge, human. Oh yes, I will have my revenge.
Well done.
In 2022, actor Terrence Howard appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience and said something that made mainstream scientists very uncomfortable. He claimed NASA's explanation for how planets form was completely wrong. Neil deGrasse Tyson and other experts immediately pushed back. They dismissed Howard as just another celebrity with fringe theories. But here's the thing. Some respected scientists have been saying the same things as Howard for over 100 years. To explain how planets form, NASA takes a accretion model. After a star forms, leftover dust has started clumping together. These clumps, called planetesimals, snowballs rolling down a hill. Eventually, they become planets. Sounds reasonable. That's what we were taught in school. But there are serious problems. The early solar system was violent chaos. That's over 45,000 miles square. Those big collisions don't create bigger rocks. NASA says the particles kept sticking to the ground. This explains the ecliptic. The sun's gravity pulls each in different directions, but all the planets orbit in a single flat system, like marbles going on a beach. When the Earth is naturally forming a flat plane, it sounds super. The crosswise is another bubble. Was cold enough for gases to freeze solid. NASA says gas giants only form beyond this line, while rocky planets form inside it, nice and neat. But astronomers keep finding what they call hot Jupiters. These are massive gas giants orbiting closer to their stars than Mercury orbits our sun. According to NASA's model, they shouldn't exist. Yet we've documented over 400 of them. Dr. Thompson spent 20 years at the U.S. Naval Observatory calculating planetary orbits. He saw these contradictions firsthand. The accretion model couldn't explain what he saw. So then Planter proposed something radical. The planets didn't form from dust. They didn't form from orbiting the sun. They formed inside it. And when the sun thought they were ready, those planets were born. Dr. Tom Van Flander wasn't some internet conspiracy theorist making YouTube videos in space, basically. He had a PhD from Yale and spent over 20 years at the U.S. Naval Observatory. His job was calculating exactly where planets would be at any given moment, down to fractions of a second. The military needed this level of accuracy for navigation, satellite positioning, and who knows how many classified operations. Van Flandern was their guide, an expert on celestial mechanics. But the more he studied planetary motion, the more the official story bothered him. The accretion model has too many holes. Random collisions creating perfect orbital planes. Planets have most of the solar system's spin, while the sun has most of the mass. Hot Jupiters exist where they shouldn't. The math didn't add up. So Van Flandern looked at an older idea that NASA had abandoned: solar emission. The theory goes like this. 4.5 billion years ago, the sun was not calm. It was spinning fast, too fast. When a star spins too fast, it builds up something called angular momentum, the cosmic version of rotational energy. You can think of it like spin, but with that mass factored in, and the sun has too much spin and too much mass. To survive, it had to shed some of that, but not gradually, violently. The sun shed superheated plasma into space, and these were huge globs of plasma, millions of miles wide, spinning away from their parent star. As these plasma balls cooled, they condensed into planets. This explained everything the accretion model couldn't. Why planets orbit in a flat plane. They all came from the sun's equator. Why they have angular momentum. They took it with them when they spun out of the star. Why hot Jupiters exist. Some planets just didn't travel as far from home. Van Flandern noticed something else. Planets seem to be born in pairs. Earth and Venus are nearly identical in size. Jupiter and Saturn are both gas giants. Even their positions follow a pattern. Their orbits have specific ratios to each other. The math works. But some planets in our solar system don't have partners. Mercury's orbit is all wrong. Pluto acts more like a captured moon than a planet or planetoid. And then there's Mars. Mars was the real problem. Too small. Wrong orbit. Wrong density. It didn't match any pattern Lander could find. That's when Lander made a bold conclusion. Mars wasn't a planet that failed to follow the rules. It was a moon. A moon from a planet that was destroyed millions of years ago. All that. Most of the planet was vaporized, but not all of it. Pieces of debris still remain. We are found in spots. We call this debris field the asteroid belt. Here's how it worked. Start at 0.4 astronomical units from the sun. 1 astronomical unit is the distance from the sun to the Earth. So you take that 0.4, then double the distance for each new planet. That sequence perfectly predicts the orbits of Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. With another German astronomer, Johann Bode, published this formula in 17. Bode's law predicted the orbit of all 6 known planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter. Said they would be. But the formula predicted something else. Between Mars and Jupiter, at exactly 6 astronomical units from the sun, there should be another planet. Astronomers started searching. In 1781, they found Uranus, exactly where Bode's law said it was, even though the formula or any planets existed. That's when people actually started paying attention. So where was this missing planet between Mars and Jupiter? Well, on New Year's Day, 1801, Italian astronomer Giuseppe Piazzi found something. A small object orbiting at 2.77 astronomical units. Almost exactly where Bode's law said the missing planet should be. He named it Ceres. But Ceres was tiny, less than 600 miles across. That's a little smaller than Texas. Then astronomers found Pallas, then Vesta, then Juno, and more and more and more. By 1850, they found 13 objects in the same region. Today, we know of millions of rocks in orbit in that zone, and we call it the asteroid belt. Now, some scientists said these were just leftover building materials, debris that never formed a planet. But a German astronomer named Wilhelm had a different idea. What if a planet did form there? And what if something destroyed it? He even gave the hypothetical planet a name, Phaeton, after the Greek god who lost control of the sun's chariot. The asteroid belt didn't have enough mass for a whole planet. Astronomers had an answer. If a planet exploded in the vacuum of space, most of it wouldn't stick around. The debris would reach escape velocity. Some would fall into the sun, some would fly off into deep space, some would vaporize. What we see today, maybe 5% of the original mass, is exactly what we would expect to find. A massive planet that was destroyed. The next one is 1946. That didn't fit Bode's law at all. Critics said the whole Bode's law thing was a coincidence. But Van Flandern saw it differently. Neptune's orbit wasn't wrong, it had been altered. Uranus was spinning on its they were scars, remnants of an ancient catastrophe. There's only one thing powerful enough to do this: the violent, instantaneous destruction of an entire planet. Explain everything. And Flandern believed a massive planet was there, and now it's gone.
I tried, you guys, I tried.
And he could prove it. Tom Van Flandern needed proof that planets had exploded in our solar system. He found it in the strangest place, during Soviet military tests. During the 1980s, the Soviets were testing anti-satellite weapons in orbit. The Americans were watching, obviously, and they noticed something strange. When a satellite exploded, the debris didn't just scatter randomly. The smaller pieces started orbiting the bigger pieces, like tiny moons around planets. Van Flandern saw this and thought, well, if that happens with satellites, what happens when an entire planet explodes? Same thing, just bigger. Way bigger. Mountain-sized chunks would fly off with clouds of smaller debris orbiting around them. From Earth, these would look exactly like comets. The big chunk is the nucleus. The orbiting debris creates the tail. But here's the thing. If comets really came from an exploded planet, some of them should have actual moons, little rocks orbiting the main comet. Not just a dust cloud, but real, solid objects. When Van Flandern suggested this, other scientists laughed. One even made a public bet. No comet would ever be found with a companion. Not ever. Comets were dirty snowballs from the edge of the solar system, not planetary fragments. Then Hale-Bopp showed up. In 1995, this comet became one of the brightest objects in the night sky. Everyone was watching. In November 1996, amateur astronomer Chuck Schramek took a photo and saw something unexpected. Well, unexpected to everyone except Tom Van Flandern. There was a bright object near the comet. Looked like Hale-Bopp had a companion. Now, Schramek made a mistake. He went on Art Bell's radio show and called it a Saturn-like UFO, and the internet went crazy. Doomsday predictions, government cover-ups, you name it. You remember it. Professional astronomers checked Schramek's photo. The UFO was just a background star. Case closed. Schramek was wrong. Or was he? Because here's what got buried in all the UFO nonsense. Hale-Bopp was really weird. It had multiple nuclei. It had 2 tails, including one made of sodium. If Hale-Bopp was a fragment of a water-rich planet, sodium would have been left behind in salt deposits. And it wasn't just Hale-Bopp. The Galileo probe found a moon orbiting the asteroid Ida. The Near-Schumacher mission found unusual gravity around the asteroid Eros. Something massive was happening and hidden inside. When comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 hit Jupiter in 1994, it wasn't one object. It was 21 pieces traveling together like a broken necklace. Van Flandern was right. These weren't random space rocks. They were evidence of something bigger. Evidence that pointed to an object still scarred by a shattered solar system. The evidence was pointing to Mars. When Tom Van Flandern met Richard Hoagland, they realized their theories supported each other perfectly. Van Flandern had an exploded planet. Hoagland had a dead civilization on Mars. Put them together and you get a complete picture. Both men noticed the planet Mars didn't behave like a planet at all. Its orbit is more oval than circular. Its mass is too small for its distance from the sun. It's only about 11% the mass of Earth. Actually, the whole planet is more of a mystery than you think. Look at Mars from space, and you'll see 2 completely different worlds. Literally, this is called the Martian dichotomy. The northern hemisphere is smooth. Flat plains covered in what looked like dry ocean beds. It's almost peaceful. But the southern hemisphere, that's a disaster. Craters everywhere, mountains, rough terrain, and for some reason, the southern crust is 20 miles bigger than the north. 20 miles? That's not natural corrosion. That's like someone pasted an entire layer of debris onto half the planet. And not just that, the southern hemisphere is older than the north. Much older. 2 billion years older. And there are volcanoes. Olympus Mons is the biggest volcano in the solar system. 3 times Everest. And directly opposite on the other side of Mars, another rise, another bulge. The Arabia Terror Rise. 2 bulges, 180 degrees apart. That doesn't seem to happen. That's what happened. The gravitation creates these tidal bulges, just like how our moon creates ocean tides on Earth, but permanent and made of rock. We see this tidal effect on Europa and Io, 2 of Jupiter's moons, on Titan and Enceladus, 2 of Saturn's moons, Triton from Neptune, and Miranda from Uranus. The same bulges, the same tidal forces. If Mars was Maldek's moon, it would have been tightly locked. The same side always faces its planet, just like our moon. And Maldek's gravity would have done something else. So it pulled Martian oceans into a specific pattern. Richard Hoagland traced where those ancient oceans would flow. For millions of years, water would move to follow this pattern around the two massive ocean systems meeting at the equator, grinding against each other, carving. Today, the Northern Arctic follows Spectaris. It's a canyon system 2,500 miles long and visualization explained the monuments. Together they painted a picture of a living moon orbiting a living planet. And one day, it all ended, violently. The face on Mars sits in a region called Cydonia. Hoagland thinks it was built as a monument, or maybe a warning. A message carved in stone by a handful of survivors before their world died. Now, John Brandenburg thinks he knows what these Martians survived. He thinks he did. These Martians survived a nuclear war. Dr. John Brandenburg wasn't looking for evidence of nuclear war on Mars. The entire concept sounded like nonsense. He was a plasma physicist working on defense projects. His job was understanding nuclear weapons, how they work, and what they leave behind. But when he studied Mars data from NASA missions, he found something disturbing. The Martian surface had unusual concentrations of xenon-129. But here on Earth, that isotope comes from exactly one source: nuclear fission. Not volcanic activity, not cosmic radiation, nuclear explosions. The concentrations were highest in two locations: Cydonia, where the face on Mars sits, and in a region called Galaxis Deus. The xenon levels were 2.5 times higher than anywhere else in the solar system. The only way to produce that much xenon-129 was through massive nuclear detonations. Hiroshima is measured in kilotons. On Mars, these weapons would have been measured in megatons. Brandenburg published his findings in 2014. The scientific community's response was exactly what you'd expect. They ignored him, called him crazy, said he was seeing patterns that weren't there. But Brandenburg wasn't the first person to theorize Mars died in a nuclear war. Years earlier, the theory appeared in the most unlikely of places: a comic book. In 1958, comic book legend Jack Kirby created a story called The Face on Mars. This was 18 years before NASA's Viking probe photographed the actual face. In Kirby's story, astronauts land on Mars and discover a giant stone face. One of them climbs in it, falls through the eye, and has a vision. He sees Mars when it was alive, a race of peaceful giants who built great cities. These giants created intelligent machines to help them work, but the machines evolved. Artificial intelligence, self-aware. Refused, war broke out. The war lasted generations. Finally, the giants built a doomsday weapon and aimed it at the machine's homeworld, a planet that orbited between Mars and Jupiter. The weapon worked. The planet exploded. But the blast also stripped away Mars's atmosphere and killed almost everyone. The surviving giants caught the face as a warning, and they went underground to die. Now here's what's strange. Kirby was friends with rocket scientists. Werner von Braun's team consulted on his stories. Willy Ley, who worked on the V-2 rocket, wrote articles for the same magazines. These weren't just comic book guys swapping stories. These were people with security clearances having conversations we'll never know about. I remember during Project Stargate, Joe and Monica remote viewed something unusual. Joe was given coordinates and nothing else. And what Joe saw at those coordinates were humanoid beings, but very tall. Giants. He saw huge cities, civilization, but their civilization was dying and they knew it. Then Joe comes out of his remote view trance. Remember, he was just given coordinates in an envelope. Then he was handed the envelope, which held full information about what and where he saw. The coordinates were from Mars, 1 million BC. Now, Joe never heard any of these theories about Mars. Remember, he was a war hero. He was pretty straight arrow. He didn't read comic books. But for some reason, Joseph McMoneagle remote viewed everything that we're talking about today. So was Kirby's story pure fiction? Or did he hear something? Because his 1958 comic described nuclear war on Mars, an exploded planet creating the asteroid belt, and survivors building monuments. All the same elements Van Flandern, Hoagland, and Brandenburg would propose decades later. But there's a dark twist to Brandenburg's theory. He believes the nuclear explosions didn't come from the Martians. He believed it was an attack from somewhere else. Someone or something wanted Mars dead, and whatever it was, they succeeded. And Mars was only the beginning. space on Mars, the exploded planet theory, nuclear war, it all fits together perfectly. Too perfectly. And that's the problem. Let's start with Van Flander's
I'm
solar
only jumping on
fission
the wall
theory.
like this
It
because
explains
I
things
know
the accretion
we
model
can
can't.
hear.
Why planets
Stop.
orbit in a flat plane, why they have most of the angular momentum while the sun has most of the mass, why Bode's law works. But if stars spit out planets on a regular basis, we should see it happening. Astronomers have cataloged thousands of star systems. Not one has ever been caught in the act of solar fission. Van Flandern had an answer. Maybe it only happens when stars are very young. Maybe we're looking at the wrong time. Well, that's fair enough, but it's still a theory without direct observation. The exploded planet hypothesis has bigger problems. Critics love pointing out that the entire asteroid belt has less mass than our moon. How could that be the remains of a whole planet? Well, remember from earlier, Van Flandern did the math. What you'd expect to see in that asteroid belt is about 5% of what was there, and that is the percent that we see. The math works. But we've never seen a planet explode, and we don't even know how a planet could explode with nuclear weapons. Now, natural uranium reactors exist on Earth, but they can't blow up a planet. Neither can volcanic activity or tectonic shifts, unless it wasn't natural. And now we're back to Brandenburg's nuclear war theory. The xenon-129 on Mars is real. The concentrations are documented. But xenon-129 can also form from cosmic ray bombardment over billions of years. Mars has a weak magnetic field, no protection from radiation, so maybe that's all we're seeing. Now, Brandenburg says no. The distribution is wrong for cosmic rays, too concentrated in specific areas. But his critics aren't convinced. Then there's Richard Hoagland's base on Mars. NASA says it's pareidolia, seeing patterns that aren't there, like seeing shapes in clouds. When they photographed it again with better cameras, the face looked less fake-like and more like a natural mesa. I find that suspicious, but that's the official story. But Hoagland predicted other things. He said if Mars was once a moon, we'd find salt deposits in Valles Marineris, where the ancient oceans met. NASA found them. He predicted the northern plains would show signs of ancient water.
You guys see how there are dumb players?
Stress
They
features.
can't realize I'm
Mars has
freaking
them.
pinpointing.
Coincidence?
But hey, whatever.
Maybe. Or maybe Hoagland was right about some things and wrong about others. And that seems to make
I'm
more
just gonna
sense.
camp now
But here's
because
what
I
we know
think
for
I feel
sure.
like it.
Mars is weird. It's two very different planets smashed together. Venus spins backwards. Uranus is tipped on its side. Neptune's orbit doesn't match predictions. The asteroid belt exists exactly where a planet should be. Something happened in our solar system. Something violent. The evidence is literally written in the stars. The question isn't whether our solar system was damaged. We know it was. We don't know how or why. And the question we really want to know, could it happen again? Tom Van Flandern died in January 2009, alone. His exploded planet theory was dismissed by mainstream science. They called him a crank. A brilliant crank, but still a crank. He never lived to see water confirmed on Mars. He never saw the moon-like tidal features verified. He never knew that everything he predicted about the asteroid belt would check out. He died thinking he failed. But Van Flandern saw something the rest of us missed. A pattern hidden in plain sight. Our solar system is broken. Not metaphorically, literally broken. Like I mentioned earlier, Venus spins the wrong way, clockwise instead of counterclockwise, like every other planet. Something hit so hard, it flipped over. Now Uranus lies on its side, rolling around the sun like a ball, instead of spinning like a top. Its moons orbit vertically. That's not natural. Neptune's orbit makes no sense. It's too elliptical, too far out, like something shoved it there. Pluto isn't even a planet, it's a refugee, a moon that lost its home and got trapped in this weird orbit. And then there's Mars, half spoiled, half destroyed, oceans gone, atmosphere stripped, nuclear isotopes in the soil. A planet that looks like it survived something it shouldn't have. Van Flandern traced it all back to two events. Two planets destroyed. Phaedion orbiting Mars and Jupiter went first. The explosion created the asteroid belt and sent shockwaves through the solar system. The big one was
Damn, I almost had him and his whole fucking crew. Look at the, that nigga had to jump in. So what's it for that nigga? Ooh, I would have had him easily. I'm telling you.
Like to think Earth is special and protected. It's just right. But we're not special.
Damn, I guess my teammates can't keep up with the kills. You know what I mean? 3 kills. Yeah, power kills and a 4 kill death ratio. Should I play with these guys?
But maybe we're not looking in the right place.
Nah.
Maybe the aliens were here all along. They lived on Mars, built monuments, created civilizations, and then they were gone. The face of Mars might be their last message, a warning carved in stone. But we can't read it. Or won't. Van Flandern spent his life trying to tell us the solar system's real history. A history of violence and destruction. Planets don't last forever. Nothing does. Earth sits between two dead worlds. We study their corpses and pretend we're different. But the math doesn't lie. The pattern is clear. Venus fell, Mars fell. Now, NASA knows this story. They have the data. Every mission to Mars confirms it, but they keep quiet. They show us photoshopped pictures of red sunsets and ancient riverbeds. I have episodes on how they fake them. They don't show us the scars of war, the evidence of violence, the warnings carved in the landscape. They treat us like frightened children. They don't think we can handle the harsh reality that all things must end, including our planet. They think admitting this would cause worldwide chaos. And you know what? They're probably right. Thanks for listening or watching the Wi-Fi strip, where I try to get right to the point, right to the story, then right to the truth. But if you want me to expand this into a longer episode... This episode of the Y-Files is brought to you by PDS Debt. The accepted narrative describes the Knights Templar as humble warrior monks protecting Christians on the road to Jerusalem. The Knights were later betrayed and ultimately destroyed. But there is another story within that story. It's a legend filled with murder, mystery, and buried treasure. The Templars were in Jerusalem protecting Christians. But that was their cover story. The real reason they were there was for something. Ancient technology. So as soon as the Knights Templar arrived in the Holy Land, they started digging. And then... Isn't it like $1,700 a night?
Whatever my baby wants, my baby gets. Anyway, Venus and I start the business. And it's for you, human.
No way. How many times do I have to
Hear me out. You're having a hard enough time making my monthly credit card payments as it is. Then there's gas, home supplies, camel chow. Do you see how much Gertie eats? It's fine. I'm chucking up. Anyway, I can't keep up. Struggling with a lot of monthly debt payments, credit cards, personal loans, collections, medical bills. Everyone with over $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies. Well, if I had good credit, I wouldn't be bugging you for a loan.
Well, there's no minimum credit score required. Good and fair credit is acceptable. They roll your debt into one low monthly payment. You can save thousands in interest and fees qualified viewers a free debt analysis just for completing the 30-second online assessment at www.pdsdebt.com/files.
pdsdebt.com/files.
You got it.
But it sounds perfect. I'll sign up after the beavers are done filling the beaver boxes with wood.
Wait, where did you get these?
Out here with the bundles in the garage. The beaver say it's delicious. Well, I'm sorry. Beaver's gonna beaver. From now on, you just let me know anytime you get wood.
My wife's gonna kill me.
Oh, don't worry about it. Once she sees these pins, she'll forgive you. You know what? I'll have the boys carve an extra large pin for you to wear. That way when she gets home, you'll have a huge heart on for her.
You have reinforcements inbound.
The Knights Templar were formed in 1118. At least that's when they were officially formed. The real story began many years earlier in Constantinople, now Istanbul.
Istanbul was Constantinople, now it's Istanbul. Now Constantinople been a long time gone. Constantinople, but a Constantinople get the works. It's nobody's business but the Turks. What? Tell me that song didn't pop into your head the second you said it.
But you mind if I...
Istanbul.
The Brothers of the East was a secret order in Greece that eventually set up their headquarters in Istanbul. They practiced alchemy, they studied sacred geometry, they had writing rituals incorporating astrology, astronomy, music, and mathematics. So when Hugh Paynes, a rich nobleman, met the Brothers of the East, he was excited. Paynes was technically Catholic, as most of Europe was, but he had family members who were of the Sufi Islamic faith, which is the more mystical side of Islam. The Paynes had been told of this secret group that possessed and was protecting ancient knowledge. He wanted to meet this group and see for himself. At this time in history, Europe was in chaos. Various kingdoms were rising and falling and warring with each other. In the East, Muslims and Christians were clashing. The world was tearing itself apart, yet the Brothers of the East possessed a peaceful wisdom. They weren't concerned with modern politics. The brothers had a purpose that was much more important. Once mutual trust was established, the Brothers of the East told the European visitors their story. Well, not their story, the story. It was the story of an ancient civilization that thrived thousands of years ago. The people were highly spiritual and highly advanced. It was a civilization that was free of poverty. Wealth was meaningless. They devised methods of growing crops so that every citizen was fed. They could control the weather. Droughts and famine were impossible. To Hugh Paynes, this civilization had abilities that sounded like miracles or like sorcery. They could communicate over long distances instantly somehow. They had a way of levitating objects no matter how large or how heavy. They had medicine that could cure any illness, allowing people to live very long lives. War didn't exist. There was such an abundance of resources that anyone could have whatever they wanted. And what these people wanted most was to pursue their own spirituality. And then they were gone. How, DePaynes asked, could a civilization this powerful, who seemed to be able to control nature itself, be suddenly wiped out? The Brothers of the East said in a single day the ground shook, and volcanoes emerged and erupted. Then a giant flood swept over the earth and destroyed everything.
I know where this is going.
It was then that Hugh Paynes and his 8 knights learned of Atlantis. Hugh Paynes and his fellow knights were riveted by the story. Paynes was a nobleman, a count in fact. He was the Count of Champagne.
Oh, pardon my French.
Paynes was an educated man. He knew about Plato and his stories of the island of Atlantis. He thought they were just stories. The brothers said Plato was mostly correct. But Atlantis wasn't just a city, or even just an island. It was a civilization that spanned the globe. And each city was connected using transportation technology that, again, sounded like magic. The story became almost overwhelming. Almost. The brothers said that ancient relics of Atlantis still exist, and they still possess their power. The power to travel great distances, the power of communication, the power to heal, perhaps even the secret to immortality. If ever discovered, these artifacts would be the most powerful and dangerous devices on Earth. DePayne said that any kingdom, any country, any religion would kill to have access to this power. The Brothers of the East agreed. The technology of Atlantis could not fall into the wrong hands. So Hugh DePayne was offered an assignment. Find the ancient artifacts and bring them back to Europe for safekeeping. Hugh and the other 8 men immediately agreed and formed a secret fellowship. But where do they start looking? The brothers said they'll find artifacts under the location of what used to be King Solomon's temple, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The knights would have to act quickly. The Holy Land was a dangerous place. Jerusalem was taken by Christian crusaders in 1099, but who knows how long they can hold it. And there was another problem. It wasn't just the knights that knew about the artifacts. Groups of Christians, Jews, Muslims, they were searching too. So when the knights arrived in the Holy Land in 1120, they set up their headquarters where Solomon's temple once stood. They officially became known as Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templar. And the knights played the role of courageous warrior monks, protecting Christians making the long pilgrimage to the Holy Land. But while some Knights Templar guarded Jerusalem, other knights were digging beneath it. Day and night they dug, until one day they struck gold. Literally. The Brothers of the East were right. They promised the Knights Templar that if they dug under the Temple Mount, they would find artifacts that once belonged to the great civilization of Atlantis. The knights found a large box made of acacia wood and gold. There was no question they had found the legendary Ark of the Covenant. And then, they found 5 more. Year after year, the Knights Templar pulled treasures from beneath Jerusalem. They found the Spear of Destiny, the Holy Grail, the Emerald Tablet, and pages of ancient esoteric wisdom. They learned there were 10 arks, though they only found 6. The arks were used in conjunction with pyramids around the world to create limitless energy. This was similar to what Nikola Tesla attempted at Wardenclyffe Tower. If you want to learn how this technology worked, we have an episode that explains scientifically how the Great Pyramid of Giza could have been a power generator.
Pyramid link below.
Within the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid is a stone box. Mainstream Egyptology says this box is a sarcophagus to store a mummy, but no mummy was ever found there. And the dimensions of the box are kind of small for a human body. But the box is the perfect size to store one of the arks. The Knights Templar discovered that the pyramids were built for one specific purpose, to store the arks. And the arks, they were built to store mana. In the Bible, manna was a food source that appeared to the Israelites in the desert. It's described as fine flakes that look like frost on the ground. But according to Templar tradition, the Israelites and the Atlanteans before them extracted mana from plant and animal matter and turned it into a monoatomic white powder. This white powder provides energy.
A white powder that provides energy. New York in the 80s was wild, eh?
You're thinking about something else.
Ah.
The mana acted as an electrical superconductor and powered the arks inside the pyramids. The arks generated unlimited energy for the thriving civilization. They learned these alchemical secrets from none other than the Emerald Tablet.
Emerald Tablet link below.
The Emerald Tablet gave detailed instructions on extracting mana from animal bones. The mana could then be used for energy or even for healing illness.
Hey, didn't the Emerald Tablet also tell you how to become immortal by making the Philosopher's Stone?
Yup.
From eating pea?
Yes.
Eating lots of pea?
Yes.
Immortality sounds gross.
It does, but if you want to be immortal...
Ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
Nope.
Even if lunch is pea.
That's enough. Some these ancient texts even talked about creating mana. When mana was extracted from gold, it could be used to make objects lighter for levitation. Now think about it. The Ark is a box almost 4 feet long and 3 feet wide. It's made of gold. Gold is heavy. The Ark of the Covenant also contained the 10 Commandments, which were carved into stone tablets. Stone is heavy. Just the gold would have weighed almost 1,000 pounds. That doesn't include the weight of the stone or the acacia wood. It were meant to carry it. By the way, the men who carried the Ark were Levites. Levite. Levitation.
Ark of the Covenant, link below.
The Knights Templar also found very old texts that even predated the civilization of Atlantis. These documents spoke of a non-human race that enslaved humanity thousands of years ago to mine gold.
Anunnaki!
Yahtzee. The Anunnaki come up a lot on this channel, and I promise I'll do a full episode on them, but here's the short version. The Anunnaki were gods worshipped by the ancient Sumerians, but they were actually aliens from a planet beyond Neptune called Nibiru. The Anunnaki arrived on Earth about 450,000 years ago, searching for resources, specifically gold. They were trying to solve an atmospheric crisis on their planet. Now, finding gold in abundance, they set up on Earth and started mining operations. Eventually, the Anunnaki created a labor force by genetically modifying early human ancestors, accelerating the evolution of Homo sapiens.
We need this episode, Chief.
I know, we'll do it, I promise.
Yeah. Your promises in 60 bucks are worth about one night's worth of mana.
Okay. So, the Templars knew about the Anunnaki and how they converted gold into a powder used for healing, levitation, and generating electricity. And it wasn't just the Atlanteans and Israelites that knew about mana. Sumerian texts spoke of an alchemical science called Ra'am, which you can't help but notice is similar to the word Grail. The Sumerians used legends called Shaman. Power their flying crafts. This substance was called the mana, which again was used to power flying crafts. Mana is a Buddhists call it money.
Damn, that's so
Very
close.
slightly in all these cultures, the definition and use are the same. Mana is a potent substance.
You could tell that guy was trying to share and swear. You could hear him, but he could not see him.
The cross is all over ancient Egypt. You can even see the cross carved on the ancient Sumerian depictions of the Anunnaki. Templar legend says this is actually the symbol of Atlantis. After Atlantis was destroyed in the Great Flood.
Of the Younger Dryas.
Yep. The Templar legend of Atlantis and the Great Flood is exactly like every other flood myth we find in every culture around the world. After the flood, a few survivors restarted civilization with knowledge from Atlantis. The cross was carved in their honor. But not everything the Knights found was Atlantean. Some artifacts were from just 1,000 years before, during the time of Jesus. There were ancient texts that confirmed a lot of what was said in the Bible. But some texts contradicted the Bible. There was no way the Knights could let the Church find out what they discovered. The Catholic Church was growing more powerful every year. If the truth came out, it could shake the very foundation of the faith, and the Knights Templar would be destroyed. Besides, much of the Knights' funding came from the Church. But no historical document compared to the shock of what they discovered next. An ossuary, which is a collection of bones. This ossuary held the bones of a very famous religious family, all buried together. The Knights found the bones of Mary Magdalene, John the Baptist, and Jesus himself. But they also found the bones of the children Mary had with both of them. To call what the Knights Templar discovered blasphemous would be a huge understatement. They discovered documents and artifacts that would literally destroy the Church. They needed to keep these treasures safe from being destroyed. They needed to keep them from falling into the wrong hands, specifically the Pope's hands. The Templars knew that the existence of the bones of John, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene and their children would mean the end of the Catholic Church. But to rub salt in an already gaping wound, the Templars found something potentially even more threatening to the Church. an alternate belief system. The Templars were Christian, but not in the strictest sense, as most of Europe was, and more importantly, as their king and employers were. Spreading information contrary to the teachings of the Catholic Church was not only heresy, it was a death sentence. Remember, this was all happening at the time of the Crusades. Religions were at war. The Templars couldn't speak about their findings, but couldn't ignore them either. So instead, they hid them, they protected them, and studied them. Some ancient wisdom included blasphemous ideas like the divine feminine, reincarnation, heaven as a state of mind, and an innate connection to the Creator. The Knights maintained their appearance as devout Catholics. They had to. Their biggest patron was the Catholic Church. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially the most powerful hand on earth. But, in secret, the Knights Templar were Christian Gnostics.
Alright, I'm back. Let's do this.
Knowledge, other culture. Other cultures call this enlightenment. The basic premise is that spirituality can be found within, without needing an outside institution. There's no reason to have priests, monks, saviors, or churches at all. You didn't need them to find God. He's already within you. One of the earliest Templar documents mentions God-given rights. Now, Americans use this phrase, or something close to it, in the Declaration of Independence. But that was in the 18th century. The idea of God-given rights during the time of the Templars meant excommunication or worse. Only the Roman Church could give someone rights. Any alternative was bad for business. And instead of worshiping Jesus, many Knights Templar idolized John the Baptist, who they believed in the Great Pyramid. To the Templars, Jesus represented a Christos, a universal consciousness, who could access, similar to the Buddha. They learned that being born again didn't refer to baptism. It referred to reincarnation, when someone would literally be born again. With the The Templars had plenty of evidence to back up their beliefs. They wanted to share their knowledge. They would wait until this knowledge could be shared with the entire world, and not seized by one pope or one king. So after years of digging, these early Knights returned to Europe with the treasures and knowledge, and hid it. And then they built an empire. Of soldiers to tens of thousands of men and women. The Catholic Church, throughout Europe, gave the Templars created cathedrals, palaces, democracy. They created a system we still use. During the Dark Ages, everything they had. The Knights Templar set up locations along the way. The Knights Templar charged a small fee. It was an ingenious system used by thousands of people for hundreds of years. Over time, those little fees added up. Now, individually, the Knights were poor. When joining, you gave all your wealth to the order. The order then took care of you and all its members. The treasures and knowledge passed from generation to generation, with each Grand Master responsible for their safekeeping. And for those few hundred years, the Knights Templar were extremely successful at distracting the Church from their true purpose. A little too successful. Eventually, the Knights Templar had their own armies, their own fleets of ships. They had their own merchants, masons, and farmers. They were independent and self-sustaining. The Knights Templar became the first multinational corporation. They had no need for a king or country. In fact, the opposite happened. The Knights Templar were so wealthy that King Philip of France was borrowing money from them. In the was one of the most powerful seats of power on Earth. In short, the Pope owed him one. On Friday the 13th of October 1307, 100 Templars, including the Grand Master Jacques de Molay, were arrested. For 7 years, they were threatened and tortured to try to gain access to their knowledge and wealth. After making false confessions, they were found guilty of heresy and sentenced to death. But now, there's a plot twist. Centuries history claimed the Church had condemned the Knights Templar as heretics and eventually had them executed. But in 2001, a document was found in the Vatican secret archives. It's called the Chinon Parchment. The Chinon Parchment documented the inquiry led by 3 cardinals appointed by Pope Clement V. It details the investigation and the charges against the Templar leaders, including the Grand Master Jacques de Molay. The Chinon Parchment reveals that the Pope absolved the Templar leaders of heresy. They were allowed to reconcile with the Church. The Pope would allow the Order of the Knights Templar to continue their work. King Philip didn't like this result. He applied pressure to the Pope. Remember, the Pope owed him one. So in 1312, Pope Clement officially disbanded the Knights Templar. The leaders of the Order, including Jacques de Molay, were later burned at the stake on charges of heresy, even though they were forgiven of these crimes. But Grand Master Jacques de Molay would have a token of revenge for this betrayal of justice. As he slowly burned to death, Molay issued a curse to the Pope and the King of France. He promised them that both would be dead within a year. This was March of 1314. A few weeks later, Pope Clement was dead. According to one account, while lying in sleep, he was struck by lightning. The fire was so intense that his body was unrecognizable. And if you read up on this Pope, you'll agree that this was divine justice. In November, King Philip had a stroke and died. He was 46 years old. The Templar curse was fulfilled. France had now lost its king and its Pope, and Europe had lost their beloved knights. Or so it seemed. When the arrest order was given on October 13th, the Knights Templar knew it was coming. They had spies everywhere. They had known for weeks. And they used those weeks to plan. On October 12th, the night before the arrest order was given, the Templars' entire fleet of ships disappeared into the darkness. And aboard those ships were all the ancient Atlantean artifacts, the holy treasures, and forbidden documents. Jacques de Molay and about 100 knights stayed behind. They hoped they could reason with the king. They failed in their mission, but succeeded in another. But not destroyed. In hiding in prison, the Templars formed into smaller groups. They assimilated into other orders. Some assumed new identities and disappeared altogether. The Knights Templar in name ended in 1312, but their mission continued. In fact, it continues today. The evidence is everywhere. Evidence of the Knights Templar can be found all over the world. After they disbanded, they were determined to keep their knowledge and traditions alive, so they created alias groups to avoid detection. In Scotland, they became Freemasons. In Portugal, they were known as the Knights of Christ. In Germany, they created Rosicrucianism. There's also evidence of them in the early Americas. Nova Scotia has the legendary Oak Island, with buried Templar treasure and deadly curses. An indigenous tribe in Panama, known as the White Indians of Darien, have pale skin and Caucasian features. Some believe they're descendants of the first Templars in the Americas. When asked about the Knights Templar, the natives called them our brothers. In early Europe, Templars were the first Vikings. The first pirates were Knights Templar. The famous skull and crossbones symbol, the Jolly Roger, that flag was first flown by the Templar Navy to frighten their enemies. One of the most famous Templar symbols is the red cross with a white background. Another is the depiction of several knights on a horse, like this statue in London. Both of these are found in cathedrals and chapels all across Europe. If you read or saw the Da Vinci Code, you may remember Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland. Pagan and Templar symbols are on every inch of it. Some, like this carving of a knight on horseback, are obvious. This is the gravestone for William Sinclair. It's in the lower part of Rosslyn Chapel. It specifically says Knight Templar. William Sinclair had no love for the church and provided help to any Knights Templar who asked for it.
I swear,
But it's
whoever
not
picked
just
that shit up
crosses
is a
and
fucking
horses
dick.
that Knights Templar
Let me get the fucking
architecture.
time, dude. Pick up
There
that
were
fucking
subtle
card.
clues relating to some of their
Oh my
Gnostic
God, I
and
swear.
sometimes pagan beliefs. Sculptures of angels in strange positions are common in Roslyn Chapel and are an important rite in Freemasonry. But Freemasonry wasn't supposed to have started until 1717. Roslyn Chapel was built in 1446. Over 100 of these little green men are scattered around Roslyn Chapel. They're pagan symbols and thought to originate from ancient Celtics. Paganism simply refers to anything that isn't Christian, Muslim, or Jewish. Why would there be hundreds of non-Christian symbols in a Catholic church? Templar legend says they were placed there as a message. Some of the more interesting carvings are plants that Europeans never should have known about. This is a picture of corn over one of the windows in Roslyn Chapel, and here's one of trillium. But corn and trillium are native to North America. Roslyn Chapel was built almost 50 years before Columbus sailed to the New World. How would Templars know what these plants look like? Isn't it obvious? They were there first. Templar legend says Sir Henry Sinclair, grandfather of the builder of Roslyn Chapel, was not only a Templar, but was among the first Europeans to visit the New World. Not only that, but Christopher Columbus himself was associated with the Knights. He was a distant relative of the Sinclairs. Columbus's daughter was married to the Grand Master of the Order. He had access, as all Grand Masters do, to ancient knowledge of the Knights Templar, including their maps. Columbus knew there was something on the other side of the Atlantic. He didn't know what, but he knew there was land and treasure. He knew this because the Knights Templar had maps of the New World for centuries. One of these was the Piri Reis map, and you know this famous map. It shows the New World and Antarctica hundreds of years before they were rediscovered. Piri Reis, by the way, was a cartographer from Istanbul, which in his time was Constantinople, birthplace of the Knights Templar. Was Piri Reis a Templar? Maybe. Coincidence? Maybe. But when Columbus wanted to sail to the New World, he first approached King John of Portugal for finance. King John refused, so Columbus went to Portugal's enemies, Spain and England. Queen Isabella of Spain came up with the money first, and the rest is history. But Templar history tells a different story. They say Portugal refused to finance Columbus because they already knew about the New World. Knights Templar had been sailing there for years. Portugal was populated by so many knights that it was considered a Templar nation. In fact, the word Portugal means port of the Gauls, but Templars say it really means port of the Grail.
Ah.
Knights Templar history says they were trading with Native American tribes for years. That's where they got a lot of their gold. They had a very good relationship with the people of the New World. Columbus knew this. How do we know? Well, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, the Union, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria Templar cross. He knew the natives would recognize the symbol and be peaceful. And they were at first. Sadly, the Europeans didn't return the favor. Knights Templars say they were the first Europeans to visit the Americas. Fine. But can they prove it? They can. In 1898, Olaf Oman was clearing land on his farm in Minnesota when he stumbled upon a strange-looking rock. It was a tablet, about 30 inches tall and 6 inches became known as the Kensington Runestone. Oman had it analyzed and translated. The inscription said it was left by Viking travelers in 1362. And this was stone found on the coast. These Vikings were in the middle of the continent. Vikings in the New World, a century before Columbus. Now remember, according to Templar tradition, the first Vikings were Knights Templar. Then there's the Narragansett runestone, found in Rhode Island in 1939, also with Viking runes. Only 14 miles from where this runestone was discovered is Newport Tower. This is a mysterious 8-column structure. It's rumored to have been built by Vikings in the 1500s to track the solstices. The local museum says it's just the base of a lighthouse, but most locals disagree. As far back as the early 1800s, Records and legends have given credit to Vikings. But why 8 columns? Why not just build it as one solid cylinder? Well, the answer leads us back to Gnosticism. The number 8 is highly significant to Gnostics. It represents completeness, a divine fullness. Remember earlier when I mentioned Jesus was initiated in the Great Pyramid? Well, there's a reason for that. If you watch the episode that we had about the pyramids,
Link below.
you'll remember that the Great Pyramid has 8 sides, not 4. To this day, Templars are initiated in the Great Pyramid, and they believe that Egypt was one of the main sources of wisdom for the original knights. And if you look, the number 8 is everywhere in Templar symbolism and architecture. The Maltese cross has 8 points, and was worn by a medieval order of knights that were attacked by fire. Today, it's the symbol of many firefighters.
A shout out to NYFD, New York's bravest, eh?
Hear, hear. Buildings like Temple Church and Ely Cathedral in England have octagonal features and the number 8 scattered all over the place. You only have to look at a few pictures of Rosslyn Chapel to start seeing the number showing up again and again. Evidence of the Knights Templar is everywhere. Now, we can't cover the Knights without mentioning the Freemasons. Countless rites, symbols, and beliefs connect the two groups almost seamlessly. Masons trace their origins back to the Temple of Solomon, just like the Templars. On Oak Island, Nova Scotia, a money pit was discovered in 1795, along with a Templar engraving. Since then, the Freemasons have been involved in almost every search for the lost treasure. Both Masonic symbols and Templar crosses are scattered across the island. The connection between the groups is so deep that they still see each other as brothers to this day. Another Templar connection is the emphasizes the rose and the cross, both Templar symbols. But why? Why did the Templars spend so much time and money hiding their legacy? Well, the Knights Templar had a higher purpose. Their ultimate goal was to change the world for the better. They knew the ancient artifacts and knowledge would be a shock to society. But this knowledge was never meant to stay hidden. Eventually, the Knights will share the truth. And the truth might come out sooner than you think. Timothy Hogan is the current Grand Master of one of the Temple Orders. He's on a mission to prepare the world to embrace their secrets. He insists that this knowledge is powerful enough to drastically alter our society as we know it in a positive way. Currently, all the Templar treasures are hidden in vaults around the world, 7 of which are here in the United States. And according to Hogan, the world is just about ready for their release. He says they'll do it in a way where no one government, no one religion will have complete access to the information. The release of information will be controlled to ensure everyone benefits. Because really, that's the Templars' entire purpose. It has been since the beginning. They wanted freedom for the people, physical freedom from the king, and spiritual freedom from the Pope. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible in the 14th century, but today it could very well succeed. We're at a pivotal point in history where many feel like something is about to happen. They just don't know what. And I feel it too. Now, that might be nothing more than humanity's obsession with death and the end of the world. But maybe it's more than that. I think we all know that we can't go on living this way. Constant wars around the world, the hatred within our countries, the dishonesty of our leaders, the corruption of our institutions. It has to stop. Imagine how different our lives would be if we had access to ancient wisdom and technology. It would be a revolution. We could finally do what Nikola Tesla almost did. Create free energy for the entire planet. It would take a while, but eventually, everyone on Earth could access healthy food, clean water, and live long, healthy lives free of illness and pain. It would be a revolution. Crime, poverty, and war wouldn't be necessary in a world of abundance. All due to the artifacts being held in secret vaults around the world. It would be a revolution. That is, if they're real.
Well done.
Today's story of the Knights Templar comes from one man, Timothy Hogan. He's the Grand Master of the Order of the Temple of Secret Initiates, the OTSI. He tells the story of ancient wisdom. It's a fascinating story.
Let's finish this.
But is it true? Well, there's nothing to debunk about his story, but there's it comes down to Mr. Hogan. Do you believe it? Now, you know what? I'm going to call him Tim because I know he's watching. Hi, Tim. This is the part part of the episode where I tell you all the positive and negative things I can about the author of the story. But today we have to do things a little differently. Recently in live streams, I've been cold reading rough drafts of scripts for this channel. You probably assume this, but I have a team of writers, researchers, and contributors because, well, I need to. My cute 12-minute videos about weird animals have now become 40-minute documentaries. I'm just the guy who talks to the fish. I don't need help. Anyway, when I read the scripts live, I'm literally reading them for the first time along with you. Obviously, they're never final scripts. I rewrite everything I'm given. I also research and fact-check as much as I can.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, then this one has to put in his jokes.
Nah, you'd be nothing without me.
Well,
Nothing!
here's where things took a turn. First, after reading the draft, I was contacted by a viewer. Stan. Stan knows Timothy Hogan. He felt that the script was unfair to him, that it attacked him too personally. And you know what? I think Stan was right. You can still see the live read on the channel under the live tab. But here's the short version. The script brought up Tim's divorce and a situation he had with a woman who was suffering from addiction and mental illness. She took over his Facebook page and posted wild stuff as him, like she was the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene, so that makes him Jesus and things like that. And look, those things happened, and it's not a good look. But are they relevant to a story about the Knights Templar? Absolutely not. Just like my exes aren't relevant to the work I do now.
Yeah, you got some real pieces of work in your past.
Did you guys see
Some
them fucking
real
dumbasses?
pieces of work, I tell ya.
I know. I went through some rough patches.
Your wife is sick.
I can't deny that. But that's the point. Tim's personal life is just that. Personal, and I don't really like gossip. Okay, I like gossip, but I don't do it on the channel.
Well, you do it on the live streams.
Okay, that's fine. Let me get through this. So
Whoever
Tim's
can
personal
sing
life
to
is
the
irrelevant.
fucking hacker.
But his professional
That's
life
the
regarding his work with and as a Knights Templar is relevant. Tim has detractors, people that don't like him, people that don't believe him. I asked the researcher where she found these people.
They're on Reddit.
They're on Reddit.
Oh, they hate you on Reddit, too.
Oh, they don't love you either.
Fair enough.
Tim's detractors are what seem to be members of different orders of the Knights Templar, or other fraternal organizations. It's actually hard to follow if you're not in that world. Now, people often ask me if I'm a Mason or in groups like that, and I'm not. And I joke that I'm not a joiner. I don't play well with others, because that's true. So when people talk about Grand Masters and 7th degrees and secret handshake grips and all that stuff, I don't get it. I don't impugn it, but I really don't get it. But the people that are in those groups do get it, and they take it very seriously. There's been infighting with these various orders for 1,000 years, and it's still happening. This board voted Tim off, or that group wanted him out. He didn't like what another group was doing, so he left. That kind of thing. Are the infighting relevant to his story of the Knights Templar? To me, no. There are people who call Tim a fraud, that he makes claims that aren't true. Well, I'm going to read you a few of his claims, and these are Tim's words in an email to me. It was also suggested that I say I'm a descendant of a Revolutionary War Templar, which is actually true. My great-grandfather was Warren of the Revolutionary War. He initiated Paul Revere, and he helped plan the Boston Tea Party. He was an alchemist and a doctor, a Templar Grand Commander for the region, and his relationship with Paul Revere was largely based on studying alchemy. Paul Revere was a silversmith. That's true. My grandfather, Jim Warren, also taught metallurgy at Denver University. My great-grandfather, James Baden-Warren, also knew metallurgy, and he was the Grand Lecturer of the Masonic Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, and he was a Grand Commander. My father was Stephen D. Hogan, mayor of Aurora, Colorado. I've been in politics my entire life. He was also a Templar. In Colorado. True.
We continue covering Colorado First at 5, and we travel to Aurora, where the city hosted a groundbreaking event for the Stephen Hogan Parkway. The project would close about a 2-mile gap between the Parkway on the west and on the east.
But even though he always had politics going on, he always tried to make time for us individuals, make us feel special.
I ran for mayor after he passed away in a special election and lost by 2 votes. Anyhow, my family on both sides had been Templars, and I was first knighted into the tradition at 8 years old as a page. Now, I've seen these claims challenged online, but everything I can find says that Tim is telling the truth about his family. There are a few other criticisms of him online that he addressed in his emails to me. I don't find a lot of it relevant. It's mostly personal, but Google him and decide for yourself. Here's where I stand. I've watched and listened to interviews with Tim that go back about 10 years. I've read 2 of his books. I'll skip. I watched his entire series on Gaia, which is fascinating, by the way. Tim Hogan has an encyclopedic knowledge of the history of the Knights Templar. Names, dates, meanings of words, ancient rituals, everything connecting the Knights to ancient Egypt, various pharaohs and kings and popes. Tim knows it all. And if you're into this subject, listen to one of his interviews. He's knowledgeable and riveting. And when we finally get the studio finished here, Tim agreed to come in and talk to me and have his claims challenged. But what about his claims? Well, from what I gather, and this is only my opinion, Tim will lean into information depending on the situation. Meaning, if he's being interviewed by an historian or someone focused on hard facts, Tim sticks to the facts. He'll bring up the theories and label them as such. Legend says, or people say, that sort of thing. If he's in a forum where the wild claims are expected, he'll lean into those. Now look, I love Gaia. I'm a paid subscriber. But everybody on the channel believes everything. And a lot of it is fun. A lot of it. But Gaia viewers want the wild stuff.
What was Atlantis? Was it a place? A culture? And what happened to it? I'm Timothy Hogan, Grand Master of the Knights Templar.
And I'm Scott Wolter, a forensic geologist and a Knights Templar. And this is Mysteries of the Knights Templar.
I don't think Tim believes every theory he discusses. I think he's intelligent and entertaining, and I think he caters to the audience. Now, at first, that might sound dishonest. That's exactly what I do here. I tell the story the last myth as it's meant to be told, and we break it down together. I'm not trying to lie to you. I'm trying to entertain you. I'm not a journalist. I talk to a fish. We do this for fun. Now, there are some bold claims that Tim sticks by, like the vaults containing the arks and ossuaries of remains. He says these are out. The purpose of the show on Gaia is to, in Tim's words, bring people up to speed. And bold claims need hard evidence. I'm going to be very honest. One of my most loyal patrons was upset about the Mary Magdalene, Jesus, John part of the story. That's the ossuary, the bones. He felt it was insulting to Christianity and I should leave it out. But it's such an insulting claim, I need to tell you about it. If I left it out, I'd feel like a liar and a coward. That said, I didn't shoot other people part of the story, leave it in. And if you followed this channel for a while, you know that I greatly respect religion and people's
Ossuaries with the bones of certain holy.
Tim discussed it and he was reluctant to do so. He knows it's touchy.
Okay, well, you just can't get away with it. Without naming names. Ossuaries of who?
They would be referred to as the Holy Families. So it would be, John the Baptist, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and their kids.
He did testing, but he was also very clear that he had no intention of insulting anyone's faith.
One of the biggest hurdles that is that we're not trying to invalidate anybody's beliefs. We're just trying to say that there might be a little bit more to the story.
And I believe him on that point. Tim's been accused of doing so many interviews and giving so many lectures because he wants to sell books and get people to watch his show. Does that mean he's lying? No, he's promoting. Graham Hancock is everywhere when he has a book out. He wants people to buy it and read it. So what? I'm a huge fan. I buy all of Graham's books and watch all of his shows and interviews. I've seen every minute of him on Rogan. I don't have to believe everything Graham says, but I enjoy the material. Same with Tim Hogan. You don't have to believe his story to enjoy it. Stories of Atlantean treasure, free energy, and ancient documents, that's nothing new. Those legends have been around forever. Now they may be true, but until we have physical evidence, they are still legends. So, is Tim just jumping on the Atlantis bandwagon, or is the link between the Knights Templar and Atlantis real? Are there really underground vaults hidden around the world with ancient technology that could rid us of poverty and war? The arcs, the artifacts, the Emerald Tablet, the mana, the bones, are they real? Well, I need to see them. But if you choose to believe the story without physical proof, that's okay too. I'm not trying to persuade you one way or another. Tim insists that the Templars will reveal these artifacts very soon. If there are no artifacts, why make that promise? When he talks about the divine in each of us, he seems to believe it. But that could be my own bias, because I also believe that the divine, God, the universal energy, the whatever you call it, I believe that is in each of us. And I don't think that belief has to contradict anyone's faith. That's why it's called faith. If Tim Hogan is telling the truth, humanity's future might not be as doomed as we think. And maybe the catalyst, the change, the evidence we need is hiding in a vault right now, right beneath our feet. I don't know if it is, but I truly hope so. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. My name is AJ, that's Cyclefish. Understood our relationship with the natural world. Our ancestors traveled the world and built enormous structures. They scaled their creations into cities. They shared a common governance and similar religious beliefs. Our ancestors lived, as we do today, as a global society. Then around 14,500 years ago, this global superpower started to collapse. First came uncontrollable change, and then a cataclysm. In less than a week, everything and almost everyone was gone. Those left behind built monuments. Monuments not as tributes to gods or homage to kings. The monuments are a warning to future generations. To us. The warning is simple. Danger is coming. Our civilization has ended before, and it will end again. This is one story that big archaeology and world governments don't want you to know. Because once you hear it, you'll never trust them again. Because the danger is coming.
Yeah, human, perfect. Look, I need your help. It's an emergency.
Of course you do. Aren't you supposed to be here?
Look, I'm trying to get it. Hang on. Don't worry about that. Yeah, that's nothing. Hang on. Crap. Don't look at that. All I'm trying to do is send a message to my Uber. Look. I need to borrow your laptop. I keep getting all these,
Oh, I am absolutely not letting you borrow my laptop again. You remember what happened last time?
We said we'd never speak of that again.
The FBI came to my house. Now I'm not allowed within 50 feet of a petting zoo.
No, don't be such a baby. The good stuff never happens at the petting zoo.
Wait, what do you mean the good stuff?
Stop changing the subject. I need your laptop. Mine is all,
You don't need my laptop. Just download Opera.
Oh, is that today's sponsor?
What gave you that idea? Opera is the faster, safer, smarter way to browse. You can sync your data and sync files between Opera on Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, and Chromebook. I love their Tab Island feature, which helps me stay organized and focused when I'm doing research.
Yeah, but how does that help me with my issue?
Well, Opera has a built-in ad blocker with no extensions needed. It also has a built-in VPN, free and unlimited, that blocks your location and doesn't log your activity or collect your information. And you can download it all for free.
That sounds perfect.
Yep. Opera has a bunch of other cool features too, like integration with Facebook Messenger, Telegram, Spotify, Apple Music, and a lot more. They just pop up in Opera. No need to leave your browser. It also has Aria, built-in AI that answers your questions and gives you real-time information. You just highlight what you need help with, and wham, it generates content based on your ideas.
On my ideas? Oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make my very own.
Yeah, let me stop you right there. Just go to the link in the description below and download Opera for free today.
Link in the description. I'm on it. Hey, listen, do me a favor and don't mention this to Gertie, yeah? She doesn't like it when Hey, Gertie, you home from the spa. How was it, honey? No, I wasn't on the internet. You know I would never lie to you. That was one time. Now you're gonna hold that over me forever? Hey, I don't get on you about watching the Kentucky Derby, do I? I know that thoroughbreds, but there's more to someone than muscles, you know? Look, I gotta go deal with this.
Yes, please, I'm begging you.
And don't get me started on how often you go to the Clyde video.
Was touring Turkish Neolithic sites when he spotted a limestone block poking out from a hillside. The locals call the area Potbelly Hill, or in their language, Göbekli Tepe. Schmidt and his team began excavating the hillside around the limestone. And though they didn't know it at the time, what they discovered would change everything we know about human history. We've all been taught the official story, the big archaeology story of the origin of for the last ice age and eventually discovered farm. People organized into settlements in Mesopotamia and Fertile Crescent. Then, about 6,000 years ago, the first civilization was born, ancient Sumer. Stone Age humans before Sumer were primitive. Their most advanced technology was stone tools. At Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists uncovered 4 man-made stone enclosures covering 100,000 square feet of land. That's interesting. But there was a problem. The earliest parts of Göbekli Tepe were built 11,600 years ago. That's 6,000 years before the ancient Sumerians were doing anything. Now this didn't make sense at all. 11,600 years ago was the end of the last ice age. Big archaeology said that this far back in time, humans were following the migration of animals. They built temporary camps or at most mud huts. Humans were not building enormous, permanent stone structures. They didn't have the knowledge. They didn't have the tools. They didn't have the talent. Yet, here it was. So the more they dug, the more things stopped making sense. Soon archaeologists learned that enclosures weren't built at the same time. This indicates long-term occupation of the site. Well, how long? Well, the newest structure was built about 10,500 years ago. That means Göbekli Tepe was occupied for over 1,000 years. Now, 1,000 years doesn't sound that long, but in human history, 1,000 years is a very long time. That's enough time for the Roman Empire to rise and rise and fall again. The excavation of Göbekli Tepe continued, and from the perspective of the scientific establishment, things just kept getting worse. Göbekli Tepe wasn't haphazardly thrown together by Stone Age primitives. It was built strategically for a purpose. The 4 enclosures are circular, between 20 and 200 feet across, and all are angled toward the star Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in the sky. Many cultures throughout history built temples angled at Sirius, but not 12,000 years ago. Yet here it was. Over the course of 1,100 years, Sirius's alignment moved across the night sky. So the builders of Göbekli Tepe created newer enclosures to follow each realignment. To build these monuments required an understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. Community planning, administration, and division of labor. The archaeologists during this time did not yet acquire these skills. Yet here it was. Within each enclosure are T-shaped pillars, some of them 16 feet tall, each weighing up to 10 tons. 43 pillars have been excavated so far, but the Göbekli Tepe story is just getting started. Only 5% of the site has been uncovered. Recent LiDAR imaging revealed at least 15 to 20 additional structures technology and craftsmanship suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Somehow, 7,000 years before Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, 2,000 years before the invention of writing, humans were capable of building this. Where did the builders get this knowledge and an axe? Well, the answer to that question is controversial. Maybe the human story doesn't start at the end of the last ice age like big archaeology wants us to think. Maybe before the last ice age, the Earth was home to an older and much more advanced civilization. That civilization then taught the primitive local hunter-gatherers about mathematics and engineering. They also taught these primitive humans astronomy and told them to pay very close attention to the sky. These ancients then told the local people their story of the time before the Ice Age, when their civilization flourished. Pillar 43 in Enclosure D has become known as the Vulture Stone. On the Vulture Stone, there's a detailed carving that tells the story of these ancient people. Also known as the Vulture Stone, depicts the worst day in human history. Engraved on the pillar are asterisks, which are bright star clusters like constellations. Pillar 43 points to Scorpius. Now, to be fair to skeptics, every culture is going to have different representations for their constellations. But look at the drawing on the Vulture Stone. Without a doubt, that is a scorpion. When the constellation Scorpius is lined up with the night sky, all the other drawings fall into place, each of them representing constellations. A sun sits atop the vulture's wing in the design, showing its placement in the sky in relation to the stars. If we use the central sun as a guide to line up the constellations, it reveals a star map. And every star map is a date stamp. Take the Hoover Dam, for example. Engraved on the floor of the dam is the exact configuration of the stars as seen from that location on the day the dam opened.
Ew, why did they carve that in the damn floor?
So if the structure is found thousands or millions of years from now, archaeologists will know the exact date.
The date the damn people made it?
Right.
Damn good idea.
The Vulture Stone shows the only time in history that this specific configuration of stars could be seen from Göbekli Tepe. It was a 100-year window between 10,900 to 10,800 BC, about 13,000 years ago. But wait, this is more than 1,000 years before Göbekli Tepe was built. So this tablet is telling a story of something that happened in the past. It's the story of a time period commonly referred to as the Younger Dryas, and the terror from the sky that changed the face of the Earth. The Ice Age lasted about 2.6 million years. Most of the northern hemisphere was covered by miles-thick sheets of ice. 30% of the Earth's surface was covered by glaciers. This sounds bad, but for the human race, it was good. Sure, the climate was cold, but it wasn't cold everywhere. Most of Africa and the Middle East were warm, with plenty of plant and animal life. And the climate was consistent for 2.6 million years. Hominids had a nice, stable climate in which to evolve during this time. Homo sapiens, modern humans, emerged during this time. We were born in the Ice Age. We thrived in it. Then the climate started changing. Temperatures became warmer year after year. The ice sheets slowly melted. Sea levels gradually rose. This would have been a concern for the human civilization, but they were helpless to do anything about it.
Oh, so you admit that even if the climate is getting warmer, there's nothing we can do about it?
Well, that's an open debate.
How dare you!
Then suddenly, around 12,900 years ago, the Earth got cold again. Not as cold as before, but cold enough that humans understood how to survive and thrive in these conditions. This mini ice age was essentially a return to normal. But 1,000 years later, this age of normalcy ended violently and suddenly. The ice sheets melted as they had before, but not over 2.6 million years. This time the ice melted in weeks. There was no time for civilization to adjust. This was the cataclysm. And there's evidence of this cataclysm in ice core samples taken from Greenland and Antarctica. There's evidence in sediment cores from the bottom of lakes and oceans. There's evidence in organic material that's been carbon dated. But there's also evidence of this disaster on Pillar 43, the Vulture Stone. Along with giving us a date, the tablet also depicts the comet impact of the Younger Dryas. At the bottom of the pillar is a headless man, linking the date to death. There's also a snake coming from the south. This has been said to represent 3 giant waves washing over the Earth. Those could have been the tsunamis that we know for sure happened. But Pillar 43 is only a piece of the story. Pillar 56 depicts more of the Younger Dryas impact. Waves crashing, animals fleeing. Now, those are scary, but to me, Pillar 18 is the most ominous depiction at Göbekli Tepe. First of all, it contains the only word on the whole site. The word is God.
Maybe it was saying, "Oh God, we're gonna die. Oh God, please save us."
I think it was saying exactly that.
Wait, I was just joking.
Well, I think something very bad happened, and this pillar is a plea for help.
Oh, my joke isn't very funny anymore.
Pillar 18 in Enclosure D focuses on the constellation we know as Aquarius. But when it was built, the pillar was probably centered on Taurus. Now, if that's true, we now have a very big piece of this puzzle. The comet Enki was discovered in 1786 and takes about 3 years to orbit the sun. Enki is about 3 miles wide. Not a huge comet, but not small either. The thing is, it used to be bigger. Much bigger. It was part of what scientists call a megacomet, 100 miles wide, and not just made of ice, but also glass, metal, and rock. About 20,000 years ago, the megacomet broke up.
This is good, right?
Oh no, this is bad. Really bad. When the 100-mile megacomet broke up, it created an enormous debris field. Now instead of one megacomet, you've got millions of smaller comets, ranging in size from grains of sand to over a mile across. When the Earth passed through that cloud of debris, the people at Göbekli Tepe would have seen a firestorm of comets raining down on the Earth, all coming from the Aquarius constellation, just as is depicted on Pillar 43. But here's the scary part. We fly through that same debris field every year. It's called the Taurid meteor shower, and it's caused a lot of damage through the years. And if you're watching this in September, October, or November, we're flying through it right now. When Göbekli Tepe was discovered, big archaeology had no choice but to admit they had underestimated the technological abilities of early man by, about 5,000 years. It must be a mistake, they said. After all, their grant money depends on them being right. No need to fund a search for, let's say, a mummy in a pyramid that's not going to be there. But in 2019, more bad news for the mainstream. That year, excavations started at Karahan Tepe, about 40 miles from Göbekli Tepe. Initial estimates say it might have been settled before Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe seems to have been built for a single purpose, maybe a place of worship or an observatory. Karahan Tepe is very different. It shows obvious signs of a structured society. Now, there are many different types of buildings at Karahan Tepe. Some could be shops or residences or food storage. Vessels, grindstones, flint, plates, and all kinds of other objects have been found at Karahan Tepe. These types of artifacts haven't been found at Göbekli Tepe, suggesting the two sites served very different social functions. But these places existed at the same time. So it's possible Göbekli Tepe was a religious center, where Karahan Tepe was a residential neighborhood, or maybe a shopping district. And if that's true, there must be more settlements in the area yet to be found.
There's more?
Lots more. In 2021, the Turkish government announced the discovery of at least 11 additional hillsides, which contain structures very much like Göbekli Tepe. The hillsides make up a 100-mile ring with Göbekli Tepe in the center. These sites are known collectively as Tastepler. Now, instead of an area inhabited by nomadic primitives, Tastepler is a metropolis. Cybirch was uncovered by archaeologists in 2021, around 10 miles from Göbekli Tepe. Cybirch is one of the most complex settlements in the area. Archaeologists found communal buildings big enough to seat 50 people. There are communal halls covered with countless engravings of humans and animals. To the south of the communal buildings are ancient residential homes. The layout of each of the Tas Tepler archaeological sites suggests hundreds of thousands of people live there permanently, right after the Younger Dryas changed the face of the world. But there's a site discovered in 2008, about 180 miles away, which really broke history, and suggests Tas Tepler may have been a capital in what was a very busy region. While digging a dam in the area, engineers rediscovered the settlement of Bankuklu Tarla.
Damn engineers.
Look, you don't have to keep tagging that joke.
Oh, you don't like my damn jokes, eh?
The Bankuklu Tarla settlement is between 12,000 and 13,000 years old. That means it was built within the Younger Dryas coal period, before the flood.
The structure found has similar features with Göbekli Tepe and the structures belonging to this period in the region. The building has a unique architectural style, shape, and interior arrangement. Unique with these features. We can say that it is a temple that dates back to 12,000 years.
This is where the existence of an ancient advanced civilization starts to become almost irrefutable. Bankuklu Tarla has all the things we find on Tas Tepler. Private buildings, public spaces. It's got storage rooms, tools, ornamental objects. It's got mega and microliths. The people of Bankuklu Tarla were so advanced, they even built a sewer system. More than 130 skeletons have been found there, each buried with hundreds of thousands of beings. The manufacturing of these proves that there was a division of labor, an artisan class. It proves that the people had time to just archaeology was wrong again. Very, very wrong. This area of Turkey shows that thousands of people live there in organized communities. They built neighborhoods and temples. They had shops and large halls for gathering. They had division of labor. They were experts in stonework. They understood mathematics and astronomy. They were talented engineers. And this was 12,000 years ago. But where's the evidence of people learning these skills? If the people at Göbekli Tepe were putting up 10-ton stone pillars 10 to 12,000 years ago, shouldn't we see communities learning these skills 15,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago? We should see an evolution of technology that takes thousands of years. But we don't. This advanced technology just appeared. But that's not exactly true. The people in the area around Göbekli Tepe, Bankuklu Tarla, and Cybirch were taught this technology after the Great Flood. It was a gift to them, a gift from the people of the sea. Mainstream or big archaeology gets things wrong. A lot of things. Göbekli Tepe shouldn't be there. Neither should Karahan Tepe, Bankuklu Tarla, or any of the other settlements in the area. We're told the Great Pyramids of Giza are tombs built for pharaohs, but no mummy has ever been found in a tomb. Not one. Not ever. But in the Great Pyramid, we did find evidence that it might have been used as an ancient power plant. Big archaeology hates that idea. And when I was growing up, we were taught that Native Americans first arrived in North America by crossing the Bering Land Bridge in Alaska between 10 to 12,000 years ago. This was called the Clovis First model because some stone tools were found in Clovis, New Mexico. Big archaeology wasn't even close on how people got to the Americas, or when. The Monte Verde site in Chile blew up the Clovis model when it was dated to 14,800 years ago. Buttermilk Creek Complex in Texas was dated to about 15,500 years ago. Suggesting human activity as far back as 24,000 years ago. Plus, traded with and mated with tribes in Guatemala many years before Columbus. And they didn't cross the Bering Land Bridge in Alaska. They sailed thousands of miles across the Pacific Ocean. This means they had advanced ship-making skills and seamanship. they had knowledge of astronomy and the weather.
To make that trip, they also had to have balls of steel.
I would have preferred that you said nerves of steel, but yeah, they were brave. Big archaeology knows the Mayan culture had a large population, but they were not considered to be very technologically advanced. But in 2023, researchers deep in the Guatemalan jungle discovered a sprawling Mayan civilization. It covers more than 650 square miles. And here's the crazy thing. The cities were interconnected by a series of superhighways. And these weren't just paths or dirt roads. The roads were elevated to allow for drainage and even paved with white plaster. The Romans get a lot of credit for creating the first roads, but the Mayans beat the Romans to it by about 2,000 years.
They're the world's first superhighway system that we have. What's amazing about them is that they unite all these cities together like a spider web, which forms one of the earliest and first state societies in the Western Hemisphere.
Archaeology was wrong about Mayan technology, but they still had to get in the last word. Mainstream said, sure, they had hundreds of miles of roads, but they didn't have vehicles. They just walked. No animals or people pulling carts. They just walked hundreds of miles. Big archaeology said this is because the Mayans didn't discover the wheel. But Mayan toys have been discovered that have wheels. Big archaeology says the Mayans never thought to scale them up to put them on carts. How do we know this? Big archaeology says we know this because we haven't discovered the carts. Oh. But a year ago, Big archaeology would have said there's no way the Mayans could have built a highway system. Why not? Well, because we haven't found one. Yet there it is. Big archaeology is quick to take a lack of evidence at face value, regardless of common sense. Like there was no such thing as the city of Dwarka, the advanced and prosperous city in India that was consumed by a great flood. That was all a myth. Then Dwarka was found and dated to the Younger Dryas. There's no such thing as Atlantis, but it's hard to explain the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, or the ancient city off the coast of Cuba that could be anywhere from 6,000 to 50,000 years old. There's no such thing as Mu, the continent that once connected Greece to Easter Island. Yet the languages from those two cultures share about 1,000 words. And the Island off the coast of Japan is right where we were. There was no such thing as Utopia, the secret underground city that hid 20,000 people from danger for thousands of years. That was just a local myth. Then a man tried expanding his basement and realized that the lost city of their and that's why big archaeology says there was no advanced culture before the flood, because there's no evidence of it. Except, there is. Every culture has a flood myth. Long before Noah built the ark, a great flood turned up in Mesopotamia in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The ancient Sumerians, Egyptians, Greeks, Hindus, they all have a legend of a deluge that wiped the earth clean. The flood myth really is worldwide. The Norse have their own version of the Noah's Ark story. The Incas, the Aztecs, tribes across America, Japanese, Chinese, Hawaiian, Australian Aboriginal. This is just to name a few. The list is much longer. Now, the legends vary, but they're all basically the same plot. People are misbehaving, so a flood is sent to wipe them out and start over with a few survivors. Now, I don't know about the misbehaving part, but we're pretty sure the flood really happened. But some of the flood legends have a twist. Those legends say that before the flood, there were advanced civilizations who flourished on their own continents, while primitive humans were still figuring out their tools. Atlantis was the powerful and advanced island nation. It was larger than Asia and ruled by the descendants of gods. Atlantis was prosperous and technologically advanced, but the people became corrupt, prompting the gods to sink the island into the ocean in a single day and night of catastrophic earthquakes and floods. Lemuria was a huge continent in the Pacific Ocean. Lemuria was home to a spiritually advanced civilization that was sometimes ally and sometimes enemy of Atlantis. And then there was Mu. Mu was a continent either in the Pacific Ocean or the Indian Ocean. It was once inhabited by an advanced civilization. The survivors of Mu brought their wisdom and began the civilizations of ancient Egypt and the Maya. Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu were all stories, there are a few survivors. After the floodwaters recede and their homelands are destroyed, these survivors seek refuge on the mainland. The people they find are kind but primitive, so the survivors grant them the gift of civilization.
And when you show up somewhere, it's always polite to bring something. Flour, bottles,
That matters. It's time that agriculture explodes across the cities. Monolithic structures now appear. Complex cities emerge, all seemingly overnight. In Hindu, Matsya takes the form of a fish and guides King Manu to reestablish civilization. In Mesopotamia, Awanas emerged from the sea as half man, half fish.
a merman.
Yep.
Hey, ask him if he has a sister, will ya?
Awanas teaches the Sumerians agriculture, writing, law, and all knowledge crucial for civilization. Quetzalcoatl, also associated with water, brought civilization to the Polynesian, Japanese, Chinese, Norse, Hawaiian, Native American. There's a godlike teacher who comes from the sea to help restart civilization. And these saviors or teachers or whatever you want to call them, they all appear after the Great Flood at the end of the Younger Dryas. They meet and restart civilization. There's more evidence. The cultures around the world seem to have been given the same knowledge. For example, Sirius is the brightest star in the sky. Every culture knows that. But every culture knew that. In ancient Iraq, Sirius was called the dog star that leads. In China, it was known as the heavenly wolf. Assyrians and Akkadians knew Sirius as the dog of the sun. And in North America, native tribes used largely canine terminology, like dog that follows mountain sheep, or wolf referring to Sirius. Most cultures in the sky is referring to the same star as the dog or wolf. Out of nowhere, while Kukutarma, a bustling city, appears in Turkey. Karahan Tepe is an entire complex dedicated to the star Sirius. And within the complex, 10-ton stone pillars that tell the story of man, the fire from the sky, the flood that swallowed the earth, civilization given a second chance. Offer a warning for future generations. For us, all that has happened before.
Alright. Thanks for joining me. If you guys want to continue listening to what I listen to while I'm playing Call of Duty, so follow, subscribe only if you like, right? No one's forcing you. I'm not forcing you. If you like it, you like it. If you hate it, you hate it. Simple as that. Life goes on. Peace.